The morning mist clung to the slopes of northern Luzon like a living thing, a grey veil drifting over the ridges, the ravines, and the dense jungle where two armies prepared for a collision neither could avoid. It was March 1945, and the Sierra Madre foothills echoed with the distant thunder of artillery, the chattering echoes of rifles, and the mechanical grinding of U.S. armour inching its way up the mountain trails. Sergeant William Bill Harding of the 706th Tank Battalion wiped a film of dust from the periscope of his M4A1 Sherman. The tank call sign Cobra Six was already warm despite the early morning chill, and Harding could feel the vibrations of the Ford GAA engine humming through the seat beneath him. Every clink of track on stone vibrated up the hull and into his bones. From the commander's hatch, Harding surveyed the landscape ahead, a narrow mountain road barely wide enough for the Sherman's 8.7-foot hull. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. On the right, the land dropped into a forested ravine, so deep the sunlight hadn't reached the bottom in what felt like centuries. On the left rose a wall of volcanic rock, jagged and cruel, perfect country for an ambush. His crew knew it. Every tanker in northern Luzon knew it. The Japanese had abandoned the open plains months earlier, withdrawing into these mountains where their Type 95 Hago light tanks and Type 97 Chiha mediums could hide like hunting cats in the underbrush. They were outgunned, out-armoured and out-manufactured, but in terrain like this, they became shadows with teeth. Harding lowered himself into the turret basket. "Engines good?" he asked. Corporal Vince Lathrop, the loudest driver in any battalion and proud of it, answered from below. "Purring like a kitten on leave, Sarge." "Loader?" A grunt answered him. Private First Class Joey Ritchie was buried elbow-deep in the ready rack. 76. He stacked forward. AP in the secondary rack. "I got the tube swabbed and the breech clean." "Gunner?" "Zeroed at 900, replied Corporal Mike Eddington, his voice a calm Midwest drawl. "Optics polished. She's ready to swat flies or crack walnuts, whichever you want." Harding smirked. "Let's hope it's walnuts today." Because for the first time, the Sherman crews in Luzon carried something the Japanese had not seen before, something they did not yet fear. The 76mm M4A1 gun, the old 75mm had done its job against infantry and bunkers, but against Japanese armour? Against their fortified caves? It sometimes needed multiple shots, and in these mountains everything came down to seconds. The new 76mm fired higher velocity armour-piercing rounds that could shred a Chiha's frontal plate like it was tin roofing. Yet rumours said the Japanese didn't believe it. Japanese tank commanders, those few still alive, had reportedly laughed at US armour during the early days of the Luzon fighting. American tanks? Clumsy, slow to traverse, too large, too loud, too easy to stalk. But Harding had seen what a 76mm projectile did to a Chiha 2 days earlier on the valley floor, one shot, turret blown off like a tin lid. No Japanese tanker was laughing then. Harding rapped his knuckles on the turret wall. "Let's roll." On the ridge, 200 yards ahead, concealed behind brush and timber, Captain Kenji Morita of the 7th Tank Regiment watched the Americans through binoculars. He narrowed his eyes. Sherman tanks, he counted 6, infantry trailing behind them, artillery fire on the higher peaks, all predictable. But something else drew his attention. The barrels. Longer, thicker, different. Still, Morita smiled faintly. "The fools," he muttered. Lieutenant Hayashi beside him raised a brow. "Sir?" American bravado, Morita said. Same lumbering tanks, same exposed flanks. Mountain roads restrict their movement. If we strike the lead tanks, the rest will be trapped. Our guns may not rival theirs, but our positions. He swept his hand across the fortified ridge. Are perfect. Below their hidden trench lay a narrow defile that the Sherman column had no choice but to traverse. Morita had positioned 2 Type 97 Chiha tanks and a pair of concealable Type 1 47mm anti-tank guns behind log screens reinforced with dirt. The guns were angled so they would strike the American lead tank from the side where even the improved Shermans were weakest. Let the Americans bring longer guns. Let them bring heavier shells. If they couldn't turn their hulls in time, it wouldn't matter. Morita listened to the distant rumble of the American armor. Let them come into the killing ground, he said, and we shall teach them once more that courage defeats machines. But as he watched the extended barrels of the Shermans, he felt a faint prickle of uncertainty. Something was different. He had fought Americans since 1942. He knew their tanks, he knew their armor, and something about these new guns disturbed him in a way he could not articulate. Still, pride steadied him. The sons of Nippon, he whispered, will not fear steel. The column rolled forward. Trees closed in on both sides. The jungle seemed to lean over the tanks, forming a green tunnel with no escape route. From the commander's hatch, Harding scanned his surroundings. Something felt off. No birds, no rustling, not even the whisper of wind. He tapped the turret ring. Eddie, traverse left 10 degrees. Eddington complied, the turret rotating smoothly. Ricci, pop smoke ready. On your mark. Harding grabbed the handset. Cobra 6 to all tanks. Hold formation. Keep intervals tight but alert. Something's wrong up ahead. Captain Thompson, leading the armoured company, answered over the net. 6 actual to Cobra 6. What do you see? Nothing. That's the problem. Behind Harding, the battalion infantrymen of the 103rd Division tightened their grips on their rifles. Jungle, fighting had taught them that silence was rarely a gift. Ricci muttered, feels like we're walking into a ghost's mouth. Lathrop snorted. If we are, I hope the bastard's allergic to gasoline fumes. But Harding didn't smile. He pointed forward. Eddie, range 200 yards. Ridgeline. Look for cuts in the brush. Eddington peered down the sight. I got shadows. Could be bunkers. Could be nothing. Hard to tell with this jungle rot. Ricci loaded an HE round automatically. Harding felt the atmosphere shift again, an unseen weight pressing down. Then he saw it. A shimmer. A slight movement. Something wrong in the brush line. Contact. Front. A blinding flash erupted from the ridge. The first Japanese anti-tank gun fired with a crack like a thunderbolt splitting the mountainside. Its 47mm round streaked down and slammed into the glacis plate of the lead Sherman. The tank rocked violently. Hit! Harding shouted. The lead Sherman's armour held, but the impact stalled its advance. Flames licked from its right track. A second shot punched into its turret ring. The commander inside slumped, blood misting the interior glass. The tank shuddered and died, blocking the path. Reverse! Reverse! Full back! Thompson yelled into the radio. Ambush! On the ridge! Chiha tanks confirmed. Japanese machine guns ripped into the infantry. Mortar rounds thumped across the trail. The mountains exploded with sound. From the ridge, Captain Morita watched with satisfaction. exactly as predicted. But before he could relish the moment, he noticed something strange. The American third tank, its barrel turning toward him, moved with startling speed. That long gun. "What is that?" Morita whispered. His answer came as a streak of fire. Eddington's voice was cold. "Target sighted enemy tank dug in at 1 o'clock. AP loaded," Ritchie shouted. "Send it," Harding ordered. The 76mm cannon roared. The recoil slammed through the turret. A glowing AP round tore upward, punching through the brush concealment and drilling straight into the frontal plate of the Chai-Ha. Japanese armor, thin, brittle, outdated, stood no chance. The AP round punched clean through the front, through the gunner's station, ignited stored ammunition, and burst from the rear in a spray of molten steel. The Chai-Ha erupted. Captain Morita staggered back in shock. What gun is that?" A second Sherman fired. Another 76mm round. Another Chai-Ha exploded like a struck match. Morita stared, stunned. The Japanese had never seen such penetration. Their intelligence had insisted American tanks carried 75mm guns with modest muzzle velocity. These new weapons were something else, something devastating. Japanese soldiers who had smirked earlier at the lumbering American armor were suddenly very quiet, then afraid. "Cobra Six engaging," Harding shouted into the net. 76mm rounds effective. All tanks target ridge. "Bunkers!" The Shermans, once clumsy and hesitant in jungle terrain, suddenly seemed energized. Their longer guns reached high angles, firing into the ridgeline fortifications. The explosions ripped through timber and dirt bunkers, sending logs flying and blasting gun crews backward. Infantry cheered as the tanks suppressed the Japanese positions. "Ritchie, load heat!" "Loaded." "Eddy bunker at 11 o'clock, range 240. On it." "Fire." The bunker vanished in a cloud of smoke and debris. Harding watched the transformation unfold. Japanese forces that had wielded the terrain like a weapon now found themselves exposed and bleeding under the relentless rain of 76mm fire. Their smirks were gone. Their certainty shattered. Captain Morita screamed over the ridge. "Regroup! Fire! Fire! Or we die here." His men scrambled, but the Americans now dominated the engagement. Every time a Japanese gun flashed, a 76mm shell answered faster. 1, 2, 3. The ridge. Defenses collapsed. But Japanese officers were nothing if not stubborn. Morita, knowing the ridge was lost, gave one final order. "All remaining crews charge. Attack their tanks at close range." From concealed pits, surviving Japanese soldiers rose with magnetic minds, satchel charges, and desperation in their eyes. A handful of light tanks lurched forward, engines sputtering but determination fierce. Harding saw them. "Infantry assault incoming. Eddy, sweep left. Ritchie, he ready." The Shermans unleashed a storm. Machine guns shredded charging infantry. HE rounds burst among the attackers, throwing bodies into the air. One Japanese soldier, crawling under the burning lead Sherman, reached Cobra Six with a satchel charge clutched in trembling hands. Harding saw him. "Lathrop forward 20 feet. The driver slammed the accelerator, tracks roaring. The Sherman lurched forward, crushing the soldier beneath 40 tons of steel. The satchel detonated harmlessly under the placed belly, but too far back to penetrate. More infantry charged. More fell. Within minutes, the ridge was silent. Smoke drifted over the battlefield. The ambush had failed. The Japanese had underestimated what the new Shermans could do, and the 76mm had made sure they paid for it. Cobra Six parked on the ridgeline as infantry secured the last pockets of resistance. Harding climbed out of the hatch and leaned against the turret, catching his breath. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Eddington spoke softly beside him. They weren't expecting it. Harding nodded. The 76 spooked them good. Behind them, Ritchie grinned, wiping soot from his face. Spooked. Did you see that Chiha pop like a can of peaches? They'll think twice before smirking again. Harding looked across the jungle valley stretching below. More fighting awaited. More ambushes. More ridges. More Japanese tanks still clinging to old confidence. But now? Now the tide had shifted. Because for the first time, American tank crews could say with certainty, "We can kill theirs before they kill ours." And the Japanese, once disdainful, once certain of their superiority in mountain warfare, were learning the truth the hard way. The 76mm gun changed everything, and this was only the beginning. The rain had finally stopped, but the jungle was still dripping thick droplets falling from the canopy like a slow, steady heartbeat. Jack Callahan pushed aside a curtain of leaves and stepped into a narrow clearing, his boots sinking into the muck with a wet, unpleasant squelch. His Browning M2, disassembled and wrapped in oiled cloth, rested across his back like a burden he'd been carrying his whole life, not just the past 6 months. Corporal Reyes was already there, squatting on a fallen log with a cigarette between his fingers. His dark eyes flicked up at Jack. "You're late," Reyes said, though not unkindly. "Had to get Private Nolan to stop using the ammo crates as a seat," Jack replied, dropping his pack. "Kid's gonna get someone killed one day." Reyes chuckled, the smoke curling from his lips. "He's green. We all were green once." Jack didn't respond. He wasn't sure he had ever been green. Not really. Not after Guadalcanal. Not after the ridge where he had held the line with nothing but a jammed machine gun and the weight of 2 dying friends collapsing on top of him. He had seen too much even before coming here to Peleliu. "Sit," Reyes said. Jack obeyed, lowering himself onto the damp ground. The clearing smelled of wet earth, gun oil, and something faintly sweet drifting from the jungle, some flower that had no business blooming near a battlefield. Reyes finally spoke again. "How's the M2? Jack patted the oiled cloth over his shoulder. "Heavy. But she's good. Bolts cleaned, cooling jackets fine, tripod still being a stubborn bastard." "You and that gun," Reyes said, shaking his head. "Most men here pray they never have to touch her, but you treat her like she's your girl back home." Jack took a breath. "Maybe she's the only one that listens." Reyes glanced at him, the humour fading from his face. "You should talk less like that, amigo. This island is already trying to kill us. No need to help it." Before Jack could reply, the brush behind them rustled. Lieutenant Harper stepped through with the rigid posture of a man who'd slept standing up for the past 3 nights. His uniform was soaked, his jaw covered in stubble, and his helmet was dented on one side from a grenade blast 2 days prior that had killed 2 of their men. "Gather round," Harper called out sharply. More Marines appeared from the trees, Nolan, sweating and pale. Vasquez, quiet as always. Briggs, broad-shouldered and perpetually chewing on something. And finally Jennings, the radio man, already fussing with his crackling equipment. Harper waited until they'd formed a half-circle. "We move at 1,600, he said without ceremony. "Command wants us to push up the western ridge. Intel says there are 2 MG positions dug in likely type 92 seconds. They've been pinning down Fox Company. Our job is to silence them." Briggs spit out whatever he'd been chewing. "Silencing or stealing, sir?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Harper's face. "Destroying," he said. "We don't have the luxury of trophies today," Reyes muttered. "Fox Company's been getting shredded. 6 men down just this morning." 7, Jennings corrected. "Got the update 10 minutes ago." A heavy silence settled over the group. Harper scanned their faces. "We'll move along the ravine, thick cover, but it's steep, muddy, and visibility will be trash. Once we get close, Callahan sets up the M2 on the ridge edge. Direct line of fire into the Japanese nest. Suppressing fire, then the riflemen move in." Jack nodded slowly. His chest felt heavy. Setting up the M2 under fire wasn't new for him. But the terrain, the narrow ridge, the mud. He could already imagine the worst of it. The M2 wasn't a nimble weapon. It was a stubborn, heavy monstrosity that resisted being carried, assembled, or fired from awkward positions. But it was also the only thing standing between his men and the enemy. "Questions?" Harper asked. Briggs raised a hand. "Yes, sir. What's the backup plan if Callahan's piece jams? Or, you know?" He let the unspoken hang in the damp air. Harper looked at Jack. "It won't jam," Reyes cut in gently. "Everyone's gun jams sooner or later." Harper's jaw tightened. "Callahan's won't." The lieutenant walked off before anyone could inspect that answer too closely. Nolan exhaled shakily. "This island's cursed." Reyes slapped him lightly on the back. "Relax, kid. Stick close to me, and you might even live long enough to complain again. I'll check the ammo belts one more time." Reyes looked up at, "Don't. Wear yourself out." Jack didn't answer. He moved toward the shade of a tree and knelt beside his pack. His hands moved automatically, methodically pulling out the belts, checking the brass, running his fingers over each round to ensure there were no deformities. The M2 was powerful, but she was unforgiving. A single bent cartridge could turn her fury into silence at the worst possible moment. He had lived through that once. Once was enough. Reyes wandered over, squatting beside him. Jack shrugged. "You ever feel like the gun knows more about you than people do?" Reyes raised an eyebrow. "No, but I also don't spend my nights whispering sweet nothings to a 50 cal. Jack cracked a thin smile. "She's the only girl who doesn't talk back." Reyes' face softened. "Jack, we'll get through today. You, me, Briggs, even that little pain in the arse, Nolan. We've survived worse." He'd been dreaming again. Guadalcanal, the ridge, the sound of metal clicking uselessly while the enemy closed in. He didn't mention the weight that sat on his chest each night, the fear that one day he'd freeze at the wrong moment, the guilt that he had lived when others had died. That kind of truth stayed buried. The jungle already had enough ghosts. The ravine was a nightmare. Steep walls of wet clay, roots like grasping fingers, mud that sucked at their boots. The thick humidity closed around them like a fist. Jack's breathing grew heavier as he carried the M2 across his shoulders, every step sinking, slipping, recovering. Nolan kept tripping. Briggs caught him each time without complaint. Reyes whispered, "Hold the line, Nolan. Even the mud is tired of your shit." Nolan forced out a breathless laugh. They continued upward, following Harper's raised hand signals, moving slowly, silently. The jungle grew darker despite the late afternoon sun. The canopy was so dense it appeared perpetually dusk. Then, faintly, the sound of distant firing floated toward them, sharp bursts, followed by panicked shouting. Fox Company. They were running out of time. Harper accelerated their pace. After 20 more minutes of grueling ascent, they reached the ridge. Harper signaled for quiet. Jack eased forward with Reyes at his side. The ridge here narrowed only about 10 feet wide, overlooking a steep drop into a tangled hell of brush and boulders. Below, dug beneath an overhang, sat the Japanese position, 2 machine guns. Camouflaged, sandbags reinforced with logs. There were at least 6 enemy soldiers, maybe more, moving, shouting, repositioning. They were preparing for another volley toward Fox Company's flank. Harper whispered. "Callahan, set up." Jack nodded, dropping to his knees. His muscles, screaming from the climb, fought him as he assembled the M2. Tripod down, receiver locked, barrel mounted, feed tray open. Reyes fed the first belt into the place. Jack's breathing steadied. The chaos below blurred into background noise. His hands moved with precision, each motion familiar, almost comforting. The M2 was heavy, but it was also steady, dependable, unstoppable. A weapon built not for finesse, but for control, for dominance. When she spoke, she changed battles. Reyes leaned close. "On your mark." Below them, a Japanese officer stepped forward, pointing toward Fox Company's position. The machine gunners adjusted their aim. Harper whispered. "Callahan." Jack pulled in a breath. "Now." He squeezed the butterfly triggers. The M2 didn't fire. A dry click echoed like a death sentence. Reyes' face drained of color. "No," Jack whispered. Click, click, click. The belt was perfect. The assembly was perfect. The barrel was locked. Everything was perfect. Except the gun didn't care. Harper hissed. "Callahan!" Reyes reached for the gun. "Give me a second." Then the first Japanese gun opened fire. Below them, sparks flew from rocks as the Type 92 roared. Men from Fox Company screamed in the distance. The ridge trembled with the recoil. Jack's fingers shook. His breath grew short. Not again. Not again. Not again. He slammed the top cover open and stared. A single round. A single defective cartridge. The metal casing dented almost invisible until now. Reyes cursed under his breath. "Throw it!" Jack tore it free. But the seconds had cost them. The Japanese below adjusted their position. One glanced upward. "Shit," Briggs whispered. "They see us." Before he finished, a burst of gunfire ripped through the branches overhead, sending leaves raining down like shredded paper. "Take cover!" Harper yelled. Jennings dove behind a root. Nolan threw himself flat. Briggs pulled Reyes behind a stump as another volley struck the ridge, sending splinters flying. Jack didn't move. His hands steadied again, almost eerily calm. He placed the next cartridge on the belt, lowered the feed tray, locked the cover, and placed his thumb against the trigger. Reyes shouted through the chaos. "Jack now!" Jack squeezed. This time, the M2 roared to life. The .50 caliber Fury exploded from the barrel with a deafening thunder that shook the ridge. The recoil slammed against Jack's shoulders, but he held firm, eyes narrowed, breath steady. Below, the Japanese position erupted in chaos. Sandbags burst open, logs splintered. Men dove for cover, shouting in panic. Reyes fed the belt through with rapid, practiced movements. "Keep going, keep going!" Harper's rifle cracked beside them. Briggs opened fire. Nolan, shaking but determined, fired bursts into the nest. Jack shifted the barrel, sweeping across the position. The M2's rounds tore through the overhang, sending debris cascading down. One Japanese gun jammed. The other tried to swing upward, aiming for them. Jack adjusted, breathing deep. 3 shots, that was all it took. The second gun collapsed backward. The operator fell with it. Silence fell. Then, A sudden explosion rocked the ridge. A mortar round, lobbed from deeper in the jungle, detonated behind them, sending Jack forward with a cry. Dirt and debris rained around him. Nolan screamed, clutching his leg. Jennings hit the ground, his radio sparking. Harper shouted commands into the chaos. "Regroup! Regroup! Reyes! Check Callahan!" Reyes was already there, grabbing Jack's shoulder. "Jack! Jack! Talk to me!" Jack blinked hard. His ears rang. His vision swam. But the M2 was still in front of him, intact, unbroken, humming with residual heat. He whispered, "I'm fine. I'm fine." Reyes stared at him, worried. "You scared the hell out of me." Jack swallowed. "Mortar? Yeah, missed by 20 feet. If it had been closer, we'd be scraping you off the hillside." Harper rushed over. "Callahan, can you still move?" Jack nodded. "Good, because we're not done yet." Harper pointed toward the jungle beyond the destroyed nest. More Japanese soldiers were emerging, reorganizing, preparing a counterattack. "Everyone on your feet," Harper barked. "We hold this ridge until reinforcements arrive. Callahan, set that gun again. We're going to need her." Jack rose slowly, ignoring the pain shooting through his knees. He repositioned the M2, braced her on the ridge, and met Reyes' eyes. Reyes smirked weakly. "Round 2. Jack inhaled deeply. "Round 2. The jungle trembled as the enemy charged. And Jack squeezed the trigger. The ridge shook beneath Jack Callahan's boots as the Japanese soldiers emerged from the tree-lined shadows, breaking into figures breaking into shouting, advancing men. Jack's hands tightened around the grips of the M2, the metal still warm from the last volley. The familiar vibration thrummed up his arms as he steadied his stance. Reyes crouched beside him, feeding another belt into position. "They're coming fast," he muttered. "Faster than we can talk about it." Jack exhaled, leveling the barrel. Below, Lieutenant Harper barked orders, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Briggs! Nolan! Spread left! Jennings, get that damn radio working. I want artillery on standby." Jennings didn't answer. He was still reeling from the earlier blast, blood dripping from a cut on his temple, hands shaking as he fumbled with the radio's knobs. Sparks crackled from the damaged chassis. Reyes glanced down. "That thing's fried. He won't get a signal unless he shouts it to the heavens." "Then we hold until someone notices," Jack said. Harper heard him. "Exactly. This ridge is ours. No one gets past us." As if to punctuate the lieutenant's words, a Japanese rifle cracked, and a bullet whizzed past Jack's ear with a shrill hiss. He didn't flinch. His focus tunneled, shrinking the world down to the advancing line of shadows. "On my mark," Harper shouted. "Wait!" for them to clear the brush. Reyes gave Jack a sidelong look. "You ready?" "I'm breathing, aren't I?" "That's questionable." Jack smirked despite himself. Harper raised his hand. The Japanese soldiers surged forward, leaving the cover of the trees. "Now!" Jack squeezed the triggers. The M2 thundered like a god waking in fury. The ridge shuddered. Leaves and branches exploded in bursts of splintered green. The .50 caliber rounds tore through the front line with merciless force, dropping men like brittle clay dolls. Reyes kept the belt feeding smooth and fast, shouting over the roar. 2 o'clock, swing right." Jack pivoted slightly, sweeping the machine gun in an arc. Men dove to the ground, shouting commands to one another in Japanese. A few tried to raise rifles, but the M2 was too quick, too loud, too powerful. The ridge was a kill zone, and Jack was its anchor. Briggs moved to Jack's left, firing his M1 in disciplined bursts. Nolan, hobbling on, an injured leg but determined, took a knee beside a tree trunk and steadied his rifle. The kid's hands trembled, but his shots were clean. Jennings finally dragged himself behind a boulder, still wrestling with the radio. Come on, just give me something." Harper fired from behind a fallen tree, shouting coordinates even though there was no one on the other end to hear him. "Keep pushing them back, don't let them flank." But the Japanese commander was smart. As soon as Jack's gun shifted right to counter an advancing squad, soldiers darted left, weaving through the foliage like ghosts. "Left side!" Reyes shouted. "Jack, they're getting close!" Jack swung the M2 back, but the weapon was built for range, not finesse. Tight angles were its weakness. He cursed under his breath and shifted his stance, trying to compensate. Harper noticed the struggle. "Briggs! Nolan! Cover the left!" Briggs sprinted across the ridge, sliding behind a root as bullets peppered the ground beside him. Nolan hobbled after him, gritting his teeth. The Japanese soldiers were 30 yards out now, 20, 15. Some carried rifles, others held grenades. One charged with a bayonet raised, yelling as he climbed onto a boulder for momentum. Briggs shot him mid-leap. He toppled backward in silence. But more men followed. Reyes grabbed Jack's shoulder. "Short bursts. Conserve ammo." Jack nodded, switching rhythm. The M2 snarled in shorter, controlled sequences, each punch of recoil biting into his arms. Sweat drenched his uniform. Mud caked his knees. His fingers ached from gripping the cold metal grips. The belt crawled forward toward its end. Reyes shouted, "Next belt coming!" Jack didn't look away. He didn't blink. The world was nothing but the rhythm of the gun and the advancing shadows ahead. Another volley, another. The ridge lit with muzzle flashes and smoke. A Japanese soldier broke through the mess of brush and bolted toward them, screaming. Harper fired once, hitting the man's shoulder. He stumbled but kept coming. Reyes dropped the feed belt and reached for his pistol. "Not today, amigo. Pop, pop." 2 shots, clean. Reyes lowered the pistol, breathing hard. "Bastards are getting bold," he muttered. "Or desperate," Jack replied. He slammed the next belt into place and resumed firing. The battlefield changed again. No longer were the Japanese soldiers charging in long, exposed lines. They shifted tactics, spreading out, using terrain, peppering the ridge with fire from 3 directions. Jack's effective range suddenly felt too small. The M2 could tear through anything, but only if she had a clean angle. The jungle below wasn't giving him many. Harper ducked as a volley struck the tree above him. "They're trying to pin us down." "They're already succeeding," Briggs shouted. "Not for long," said Jack, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Reyes squinted down the slope. "There, see that? A squad's moving to flank from the right." Jack followed his gaze. A group of 6 soldiers rushed along a lower path, half-crouched, rifles ready. If they reached an opening beneath the ridge, they'd have a clean shot upward. Jack adjusted the M2. "Can't angle down enough," he muttered. "Can you hit the ridge face?" Reyes asked. "What good'll that do it?" Jack fired. The bullets slammed into the slope below the enemy path. The soil burst in dark clouds. Rocks and debris rained down. The narrow trail collapsed under the squad's feet, sending them tumbling. Reyes slapped Jack's back. "Good!" Again. Jack hit the slope once more. The loosened soil gave way entirely, sliding down in a muddy cascade. The enemy squad tried to scramble up, but the mud was too steep now, too unstable. "That'll slow them," Jack said. "For now," Reyes replied. A sharp whiz cracked past Jack's head. "Sniper!" Briggs shouted. Everyone dropped low. "Where?" Harper demanded. I saw the flash. High tree branch, dead center line. Jack gritted his teeth. The sniper had distance, cover, and a perfect angle. Jack had reach, but aiming upward into foliage was a gamble. Reyes whispered, Jack, you miss. He tags one of us. I know. He took a breath. The ridge faded from his mind. The mud, the shouting, the ringing in his ears. All of it dissolved into stillness. He scanned the trees. One branch was too still, too deliberate. His fingers tightened. He squeezed the triggers. A long burst tore into the branch. Leaves exploded like confetti. Bark splintered. Something dark dropped from the high canopy. A body. Briggs let out a low whistle. Jesus, Callahan. Harper grinned, despite everything. Good shot. Jack didn't respond. He just fired again. The counter-surge. The Japanese commander, realizing the charge had faltered, barked new orders. Soldiers began retreating deeper into the jungle. Harper frowned. That's not a retreat. They're regrouping. Jennings finally shouted, I got it. Sir, I got the radio working. Harper sprinted to him. Patch me in. Static, crackling. Then a voice. Fox Company, holding at half strength, multiple wounded need support, repeat need. Harper cut in. This is Lieutenant Harper, Echo Platoon, on the Western Ridge. We have eliminated 2 machine gun nests, but are encountering heavy counterattack. Request artillery support on coordinates. Jack tuned out the exact coordinates. He focused on keeping the ridge secure, scanning, firing short suppression bursts whenever a soldier moved. His arms were trembling, his throat burned from smoke, his eyes stung, but he didn't stop. Reyes slapped a hand on his back. You're shaking. Jack's voice was hoarse. I'm fine. You say that like you believe it. Jack didn't answer. He couldn't. Harper finished the call. Artillery inbound in 3 minutes. Hold your fire patterns. Don't get caught in the blast. Briggs raised a brow. What do they want us to do? Hug the shells? Just stay alive, Harper snapped. The jungle rumbled again. The Japanese were coming back, this time slower, more disciplined, more coordinated. 3 minutes felt like a lifetime. The last belt. Reyes nudged Jack. We're down to the last belt. Jack froze. That fast? You've been firing non-stop for 20 minutes. Jack swallowed hard. Reyes' eyes flicked toward the jungle. Make it count. The ridge trembled as a fresh wave of soldiers charged through, the smoke grenades in hand, rifles raised, bayonets flashing. Harper shouted, Stand firm! Jack loaded the final belt. The metal clicked into place. His hands steadied, his breath slowed. He fired. The M2 spat fury down the hillside. The jungle lit up in bursts. Men fell. Grenades dropped prematurely, exploding in chaotic flashes. Briggs and Nolan fired hard on Jack's flanks, keeping stray soldiers from climbing the ridge's edges. The M2 began smoking. Reyes coughed. Jack, it's overheating. Can't stop. You cook the barrel, it'll seize. Then I'll rip it off and throw it at them. Jack growled. Reyes laughed, even as bullets cracked overhead. That's the spirit. The belt dwindled. 10 rounds. 8. 6. Artillery incoming! Jennings screamed. Down! Harper shouted. Jack released the trigger. The world held its breath. For half a second, all sound died. Then the hillside exploded. A rain of earth and fire. Thunder rolling through the jungle, trees snapping like matchsticks. The blast wave knocked Jack backward. Reyes grabbed him before he toppled off the ridge entirely. More explosions. Louder, closer. The ridge shook violently. Briggs shielded Nolan with his body. Jennings curled around the radio. Harper ducked behind a stump. When the last shell hit, the jungle fell silent. Completely silent. No shouting, no gunfire. Only the settling of dust and the distant, fading echo of artillery thunder. Jack slowly sat up. His ears rang. His chest felt tight. Reyes looked over the ridge edge. Christ! The jungle below was torn open. Smoke drifted in lazy curls. Fallen trees carpeted the slope. The bodies of enemy soldiers lay scattered among the wreckage. The counterattack was over. Harper exhaled shakily. Hold position. Fox Company will do the rest. Briggs dropped to a seat, exhausted. Nolan leaned back, clutching his leg but smiling weakly. Jennings lay sprawled on his back, staring at the sky. I thought we were dead. Reyes patted his shoulder. Not today. Jack didn't speak. He stared at the M2. Smoke still rose from the barrel. The belt hung limp, spent. The weapon looked exhausted, like a beast that had given everything. Harper approached, kneeling beside him. Hell of a job, Callahan. Jack nodded slowly, but his hands wouldn't stop, shaking. Harper lowered his voice. You okay? Jack opened his mouth, closed it, answered quietly. I don't know. The night deepened, settling over Fort Drum like a thick velvet curtain. Beyond the motor pool, the jungle swayed under a restless wind, leaves whispering secrets along the tree line. Jack sat alone on a low concrete step beside the armory, elbows on his knees, staring at the dark shapes of vehicles lined up like quiet steel giants. The M2 he had just cleaned gleamed faintly under a bare bulb, every corner glistening with fresh oil. It was ready. He wasn't sure he was. Bootfalls crunched on gravel behind him. He didn't look up. Figured you'd be here, came Staff Sergeant Bailey's voice, low and strangely gentle. Jack shrugged. Couldn't sleep. Most can't, Bailey replied, lowering himself beside him. Back before Fallujah, I didn't sleep for 2 nights straight. Thought the walls were breathing. He smirked lightly. Point is, not sleeping means you're paying attention. Jack exhaled, slow. Sarge, today, when the lieutenant was showing me where we're going, do you think that you're ready? Bailey finished. Doesn't matter what I think. What matters is you'll have a team who trusts you, and a weapon that listens to discipline, not fear. He tapped the receiver of the M2 with 2 knuckles. This thing doesn't care if your hands shake. It only cares if you do your job. Jack nodded but didn't feel reassured. The jungle beyond the fence creaked, branches snapping somewhere deep inside the dark. Bailey watched him for a long moment. You're thinking too far ahead, he said. Stop picturing the fight. Picture the things after the fight. Like what? Like going home. Like calling your mum and telling her you kept your promise. Like grabbing dinner with whoever's waiting for you. Like breathing clean air after all this mud. Bailey's voice dropped. Hope is ammo too, Callahan. Don't go into a fight empty. Jack swallowed, feeling suddenly lighter. Not confident, just anchored. Bailey stood. Get some rest. Briefings at 0600. Big day tomorrow. As Jack rose, he caught one last glimpse of the tree line. The wind had quieted. The branches no longer shifted. The jungle stared back at him, still and patient, as if aware of what was coming. He didn't flinch this time. Instead, he squared his shoulders, lifted the heavy M2 into its case, and whispered to himself, one step at a time. Then he walked toward the barracks, the night settling behind him like a closing door. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.